Margaret F. Albertson to the position of Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court. I submit the nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm enclosing the nominee's resume for your convenience. Sincerely, Charles D. Baker. The vice is the Honorable Sally Kelly. She had a long, long career, didn't she? Yeah, she sure did. So with that said, do you want to introduce the people that are here with you?
Sure. Let's start over this way. My brother John, my brother Michael Flaherty, my daughter Megan, my son Brendan. Missing is my son Ryan. He's a freshman at Boston College and I made him go to school. So he's in class hopefully right now. My husband Sean, retired Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court, Michael Coyne. Present Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court, Jack Garland. An unsung hero from the Boston Municipal Court, which is Joanne McLaughlin. Joanne is our go-to person. Anything that we need in the clerk's office, Joanne has been such a huge help, and I couldn't have managed my office as I have without the help of Joanne. We have Sergeant Anonymous Ray Amaru here.
I'm part of the family.
Part of the family is James Griffin. Jim and Sean and I have been classmates from Holy Cross, back at Holy Cross, and we're in each other's weddings, so Jim is here in support, and I thank him for that. First Assistant Clerk Magistrate Teresa Hamilton, Assistant Clerk Magistrate Nils Lundblad, Assistant Clerk Magistrate Brenna Flynn, and Assistant Clerk Magistrate Kate Clayman, all my team from South Boston Court.
Who's watching the court?
My colleagues have provided the coverage for us today, so we are good.
So the way it works is we're going to have your two witnesses speak, and then if there's any opposition here, we'll let them speak. And then we'll hear from you, and then the counselors will have 15 minutes each to ask you questions. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is start with your witnesses. Mike Bolton's on the screen here. Aaron, do we have him? We don't have him yet? Okay, then we'll go to Judge Garland.
Counsel, this is good?
You can sit there or there, whatever you want. You can sit over there.
That might be a problem if Iannello shows up.
Yeah.
Good morning, all. Members of the Executive Council, thank you for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about Peggy Albertson, who's been nominated as Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court, a court I know something about thanks to this body. I'm sure some nominees need well-known witnesses to help you fill in the blanks about that nominee's background, work practices, leadership abilities, and involvement in their community. Peggy needs no such witnesses. Her reputation for honesty, intelligence, and hard work precedes her and is well established. I've known Peggy for about 20 years. I met her at the South Boston Court when I practiced law, and she was the assistant clerk from 2000 to 2005, the acting clerk in 2005, and the clerk magistrate from 2005 until now. Whenever I was in South Boston Court as a lawyer and Peggy was the clerk in the session, I could be assured of three things. One, that she would have reviewed my cases as she did with all the cases on the docket that day and instinctively knew what legal issues were in play. Two, more often than not, that she knew where each case was headed. And three, that she would try to get me out of court as quickly as possible, appreciating the fact that when you're in private practice, time is money. I couldn't have asked for more. She made going to South Boston Court something you look forward to doing. She was always pleasant, always helpful, always considerate of whatever demands you were facing that day. And whenever I've sat in South Boston Court as the judge, Peggy has been an indispensable partner in ensuring that everybody is heard, that cases get resolved, and that the court's business is conducted in an open and orderly manner. If there's a phrase that best describes her, it is consummate public servant. Peggy solves problems, treats everyone with dignity and respect, understands the law and procedure, administers her office without playing favorites, and never passes the buck. She learned public service from her father, Mike Flaherty, and charity from her mother, Big Peg. Whether it was starting dances for the special needs students at St. Coletta's Day School in Braintree, or being active in the Big Brother, Big Sister program by mentoring her big sister, a woman with Down syndrome while attending Holy Cross. Peggy understood early on that true happiness arises from serving others. That commitment continued in her work as Assistant District Attorney in Suffolk County. From organizing a domestic violence awareness event at Our Lady of Lourdes Parish in Jamaica Plain, to fighting for her victims as a line DA or as the Deputy Chief of Superior Court Prosecutions, Peggy personifies the motto of Boston College, ever to excel, even as a Holy Cross graduate. In addition to her public duties, Peggy is a devoted mother to Brendan, Megan, and Ryan. To them, she and her husband Sean have given their lives. In doing so, showed what is in her heart. The countless hours spent on homecoming events, grandparent days, cross-country team dinners at St. Sebastian's, or at admission outreach events, sponsoring the Holy Cross Alumni Book Award, presiding over a mock trial, and volunteering at fundraisers that support the foundation of a young woman killed by brain cancer at the Montrose School, reflects Peggy's first priority, her family. Her other family, her court family, the people she sees and oversees when asked to describe their boss, wrote, "Peggy has been our moral compass for all things personal and professional. We've learned through her example of doing things the right way, not the easy way. She's bright, compassionate, loyal, and principled at all times, and we are forever grateful to have been led and mentored by Peggy Albertson." In sum, Peggy gets it. She understands the mission of Boston Municipal Court and the people it serves, not only because of who she is, but because she's been serving those people her whole career. That's why I wholeheartedly recommend her for the position of Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court. Thank you.
Very much, Judge. Counselor Kennedy.
It's good to see you, Judge.
See you, Counselor.
I don't realize that you and I actually went to the Ray Emerald School of Law.
That we did
Ray was our boss, and we were both pages together back in the beginning of
a few
the,
years ago.
yeah, a few years ago. You did a little better than me, though.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And Counselor,
Counselor, how are you? Nice to see you too. It has.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Been a difficult time during COVID.
Yeah.
But tell me, you've known this, what attribute would you give her that she is bringing to the court?
Ultimately, I think it's, as I said, she's a public servant. She really takes the role as a public servant seriously. She's always ready, she's always kind, she's always ready with a solution. As I said, she doesn't pass the buck. She's not looking to put either responsibility or blame on anyone else. Very proactive in money that hooks up, and I know she'll be a great judge. So strong.
You couldn't have come at the most difficult time. So those, it's better now. It's more, yeah.
Yeah, things are getting back to normal.
And God bless you, me too.
thank you. Thank you very much, Judge. Appreciate it. You can stay there if you want. Peggy, we'll hear from you.
I would like to begin by thanking Chairman Jubinville and all of the governor's councils for speaking with me, reviewing my qualifications, and allowing me the opportunity to appear in this chamber for today's hearing. I would like to express my gratitude to Governor Baker and to Lieutenant Governor Polito for their confidence in me and for their nomination of me as an Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court Department. To the Chair of the Judicial Nominating Commission, all of the commissioners, and the Joint Bar Committee for their invaluable service to the citizens of the Commonwealth. To Chief Legal Counsel Bob Ross, Nominating Commissioner Lauren Green Petrigno, Deputy Director of the Judicial Nominating Commission Emily Gauthier, and Valerie McCarthy of the Governor's Council Administrative Office for their kindness and assistance to me during this process. I want to express my gratitude to several individuals who helped make this day possible. My parents, Peggy and Mike Flaherty, to whom I owe everything. that I have become in this life. Their unconditional love, their selflessness, and support of my educational pursuits, and my choice to be a working mom helped create this path that brought me to this chamber today. I would like to thank my brothers, Michael and John, who are here, as well as my sister-in-laws, my nieces, nephews, for their love and support. My first justice, Pamela Deschelle, who I believe is on Zooming in and watching us today, for her outstanding example and guidance. The clerk's office staff at the South Boston Court, I thank you for your dedication and excellence in serving the court users. Specifically, I want to acknowledge First Assistant Clerk Magistrate Teresa Hamilton, Assistant Clerk Magistrate Kate Clayman, Brenna Flynn, and Nils Lundbad. It's such an honor to call you my work family. I want to thank my children, Brendan and Megan, and Ryan, who is not here and hopefully in class on campus at Boston College this morning. You make me proud every day, and I love you with all of my heart, and then some. Lastly, an abundance of gratitude and love to my husband, Sean, to whom I've been married for 32 years. There is not a day that goes by that I don't appreciate and marvel at your intelligence, your humor, the love of our children, and your devotion to me as a life partner. Without your constant encouragement and support, I would not be in this chamber today. In order to bring direction to my remaining brief thoughts, I offer the words of author Wendell Berry. The significance and ultimately the quality of the work we do is determined by our understanding of the story in which we are taking part. For me, the watchwords are significance, quality, and the story. Raised at the table of Peggy and Mike Flaherty of South Boston, I witnessed unwavering commitment to family and community. Their lessons, both in word and deed, were focused upon that which was in service to the other, that which was just and fair, and that which was compassionate and helpful, even life-altering. In my 30 years of service as an assistant district attorney, assistant clerk magistrate, acting clerk magistrate, and clerk magistrate, I have always understood the significance of the story in which I have taken part. People come to a courthouse, they are not having their best, easiest day. Desiring justice as a victim, desiring due process as an accused, seeking protection from the harm of others, seeking services to help addicted family members. The significance has never been lost on me. Equally, I hope that my resume, my record, and the witness of others here today give you, counselors, the confidence that there has been quality in my actions, whether in trying cases, in conducting hearings, in supervising and mentoring others, or in serving the public and court users on a daily basis. Both my upbringing and my experience have emphasized the importance of understanding my role in the story of others. I believe I have the skills, the knowledge, and the qualities to continue the important work of the law and a larger role as an associate justice in the court where my service began. I am grateful for your time in this hearing and in conversations prior to today, and I ask for your kind consideration and vote of confidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those words. Counselor from Watertown, time starts now.
Nice to see you.
See you, Counselor.
First of all, I want to thank you for all the time that you afforded me. I really appreciate it. I am so impressed with your background. I've been here almost 23 years. I was not far by becoming a judge. My question is, what took you so long? I have not voted, but this council has voted for judges. Have done it all. I mean, legal incentives and responsibilities you have been given. Now, tell me, first of all, most importantly, what do you call Megan?
No age.
My granddaughter is not the Irish way either. Easy. But, and I'm not going to get you because my daughter graduated from UC, one of my sons, one of my granddaughters, and one of my grandsons. So it's
Fine institution.
yeah, right. That's it won't have any effect at all. But I'd like to ask you, with all your experience, I mean, it would take time, we only have 15 minutes, which is ridiculous. No official committee. So I would be caught up in mid-sentence. So I'm going to ask you, you've got the attorney's office, what does this bring to court for you? What does it mean to you?
So as you said, I've spent 30 years in the courts of the Boston Municipal Court Department, starting out as an assistant DA right across the street at Pemberton Square. And then I practiced a number of years in the office in Superior Court. The majority of my time in my legal profession has actually been serving as in the magisterial functions at the South Boston Court, and it has allowed me really to see the benefits of a true community court and what. So I think that my experience in both of those areas of being a DA and a clerk magistrate, I know the community of the Boston Municipal Court. I know the users and I know the needs of those communities, but I also know the resources that are available. And I think that I would bring that to the bench as an associate justice of having the knowledge of what is out there for services for people in need throughout the communities, and I would look to use those.
Well, you've had such responsibility. How many people have you been?
So at the attrition, we've kind of lost a couple people, but right now I have a staff of 8 amazing individuals who show up every day, dedicated to doing their job, to helping people during COVID. The individuals on the left-hand shoulder, we stood side by side every day, as Attorney Donovan, who's here, can testify to, and Attorney Garland, to make sure that the people in the community had access to the services that they needed. That being restraining orders, that being Section 35 commitments, their cases heard, motion dates scheduled. I stand on their shoulders. I couldn't do everything that I do without their support.
But you have overseen all of what's.
So in both as, when I was the deputy in the Suffolk County DA's office and as well as the deputy in the Superior Court, yeah, so I had the privilege of working with Judge Mike Bolden, if he comes on the screen, as the supervising and assigning and interviewing and hiring a lot of the DAs and support staff. So I worked collaboratively with him. It wasn't just me, it was a team effort, and I've learned so much from the likes of working for somebody like Ralph Martin, who was a mentor, boss, someone that encouraged his DAs to really do the right thing and gave them multiple opportunities to grow within the legal field. So I owe a debt of gratitude to Ralph Martin. I owe so much to Judge Bolden as well for helping me get where I am today.
Well, I've heard from so many people about you. Everyone respects you and they're so pleased that you're finally doing it and you're going to be a judge. I always feel like with all of the recommendations and everything they've said about you that you really should be entered into sainthood. But so there isn't any challenge that you see because you've seen it all, you've been in all the courts. So I can't even imagine there's no learning curve here.
I think with any change, there's a learning curve. To be honest, I've talked to Judge Garland about it. What did I see? I've asked him, what do you think, my difficulty is going to be starting out? And personally, you're right, the clerk's office sees everything. I mean, everything starts with us before it gets into the courtroom, before the judge. So I am familiar with all of the cases that would come through the Boston Municipal Court Department. But I think as a judge, I think I need to freshen up on some of the civil stuff. We're seeing a lot more complex civil filings now than I think we ever have been. But I've got the skill set. I've got I know we have the law books, and I've got friends like Judge Garland who would be assistants. So I feel good about that.
I have to tell you, some of the people that have been approved compared to you, it's really egregious. someone that applied for clerk magistrate 2 years ago. Agency found him not in a state.
And with that being said, I would like to refer to the candidate before the council this morning, Margaret Albertson. Just as a bit of background, I have known Margaret for over 30 years. I call her Peggy, but I know she's before you as Margaret. We first met in the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office in the early 90s, where she was one of the many assistant DAs that I supervised as the chief of the district courts. Having shown her talent and experience early on, she quickly became my chief deputy, and as a result, carried out the policy of the office through me to all of the assistant district attorneys in the districts and municipal courts in Boston. The one thing that I have to say is that her ability to supervise these attorneys was excellent. She stood in my stead in many instances before the various judges and the various courts, speaking on my behalf. And she was well received not only by the judges then, but was also well received by all the assistant ADAs whom she supervised with me while we were in Suffolk. Fast forward to several years later, Peggy and I had the opportunity to work again, where she was the clerk magistrate at the South Boston Division of the Boston Municipal Court. I was the first justice there, and our relationship continued, our professional relationship continued probably 9 years after that. Needless to say, when I arrived in South Boston, the clerk's office, which as many of you know, is the real face of the trial courts in the community, was being run very efficiently, but most importantly, it was being run in a way where the people in the community felt comfortable coming in and seeking assistance and seeking help in our municipal court. Peggy was a fabulous manager. She managed the staff very effectively, which also allowed the staff to work efficiently throughout the day. But most importantly, Peggy always demanded respect to the community when they came to that front window. And she was the leader. She showed by example. She led by example. And, you know, it can be very difficult at that front desk in the clerk's office on any given day in a busy urban court. But I have never seen Peggy lose her control. I have never seen her lose her poise and confidence. She always treated everyone with respect, and I think as a result, the trial court was much better off with her as the face of the South Boston Division of the Boston Municipal Court. And finally, being the first justice in South Boston, which is a one-judge court, I sometimes did not have the colleagues around me to run things past when I was making some of my judicial decisions. Peggy was always up on the law. Peggy always was very in tune to the trends that were going on in the court, and she was often my backstop when I had to discuss issues of law that had recently occurred and that were recently developing in the courts. So her ability to be on top of the law as well as to run the office was an unbelievably helpful thing for me as the single justice in this South Boston division, excuse me. So as a result, let me just sum up by saying I can't think of a better candidate with the experience, the temperament, the skill set to become an associate justice of one of our Boston municipal courts. And I would highly, highly recommend that she be considered to move on. And I would be remiss if I did not say that years from now, you all will be very satisfied with your decision to advance her to those positions. So with that being said, if there are any questions from the council, I would certainly be willing to answer questions. Again, I apologize for the digital and technical difficulties.
Thank you.
Judge, I want to thank you for your service. I can't believe you're retiring. I've been trying for years to change that 70. I don't have the authority, and it's a shame to lose you. Thank you for your service. I always say I don't have a crystal ball, and you never let me down, and I've always been proud. That was one of my proudest votes, so I wish you all good luck and health in your retirement. Thank you. And your testimony was very meaningful, and everything you said is absolutely true. And what I like about you talking for her and the other witnesses, that you know her, and you know her through the years, so you're talking from your experience with her. We've had people sitting in this chair testifying, and I've asked, how do you know this nominee? How many times have you seen him or her in court? Once. So your testimony and the testimony here from the witnesses mean a lot to me. So thank you so much. I'm sorry you're not here in person.
Thank you very much, Counselor.
So we'll let you go, Judge, but I just want to indicate to you that the counselors voted for you to be a judge and Peggy to be a clerk, so we could get you, us defense lawyers could get you two out of the DA's office, so we could win a case now and then.
He's working there.
Yeah, it is, yeah, definitely. Thank you, Judge, appreciate it.
All right, thank you all. Have a good day.
Counselor Ianello.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Council.
You were estimated 17 years ago, you became the clerk. You've done a great job.
Can't see phone, you
Your
can.
family, people I speak to, people here, I have to court, clerk's office, just say you do a great job. Quick question. Continuances. I mean, you have most of the folks here who are lawyers on the council. They work for themselves, so sometimes they have to be in multiple court. What is the Judge Albertson going to be? If somebody comes in and says, yeah, I need a continuance, I know. Could be the third, could be the fourth. It's a legitimate reason why. What are you going to do in those circumstances?
Going to listen to all the parties that are before me, the reasons why the continuance is requested, see if there's any opposition to it, but in my experience, continuances are very helpful in cases, both in the civil and the criminal. And often you get the parties in the court, and that reality of stepping into court tends to move the ground a little bit, shifts it, and then all of a sudden the parties say, well, let's step this back, we need another conversation. So I'm pro continuances if that's such a thing, so long as there's not an issue of harm or detriment to someone.
Give me an example of how that would happen. That'd be definitely something to have for a continuance.
Well, I mean, on the criminal case, if you've got a case that's been dragging on for 2.5, 3 years, and there's a victim, this family.
So other than something, in any case, that's been dragging on 3 or more years, do you think it's an hour? Because you have some attorneys, not me, I'm a small practitioner, you got a guy like Kennedy who's got like 30, 40
He's
cases.
used to hearing from me on continuance.
Speed dial for him, right?
How many cases I had last week? I go, oh, man, it was a big number. Oh, it's a he's lying.
Those, am I lying?
No, you've done a great job. I don't have any questions for you. What a great education. You got Holy Cross, you got BU Law. I mean, that's a dream for most people. That is a dream. Assistant DA, you've been a clerk. I mean, your family should be so proud of you. And what a family you come from. You know, your father, you got your brother over there. I mean, you have a family of public service. Your brother's doing an outstanding job in difficult times on the Boston City Council. And, I'm sure, all your family and friends must be so proud of you and your family. When your name comes before us not next week. Next week. So, next week.
We can have the assembly.
Yeah, not the week after. I'll be more than happy to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think that if you talk to my brothers, myself, and my husband and my children, the credit goes to my parents. They they supported us in everything and anything that we needed to do in that education, is they made sacrifices for us to get the education and have that opportunity. So I thank you, but my thanks really is to my parents.
And speaking of your parents, just for a second, my neighbor loves your family. Our former state senator Arthur Lewis.
Sure.
Oh, he's the best. I really like him a lot.
My dad have been best friends since they
Yeah.
worked here.
Yeah, I know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a lot to be said for institutional knowledge, and I'm serious, and even genetic institutional knowledge, as your family knows from public service, there's a lot to it. And clearly, as has been, displayed verbally already, with your education, you would have had a path where you would make a lot more money than you're making right now. First of all, I would like to compliment you and the clerks and district support throughout the state for what I think was tremendous yeoman's work during the pandemic. Faced with challenges that we've never been faced with, we actually had a meeting because this constant, people don't understand, but this constant churn in the courts, right? In all levels. So we are constantly meeting. We don't take the breaks like the House and the Senate, bless their hearts. But, we go straight through, and there are real, as you know, like consequences to us not meeting because everything stops. And it doesn't mean it just stops here. It means it stops for you and it stops for the man on the street. We actually had to hold a hearing before we had even figured out how to do the video with just audio. And, it's a challenge, but I have to say the staff in this building rose to it as did the clerks. Can you share with me, if you're comfortable, some of what you would say? I always like to look, I'm an accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative type of person. Some of the things that you all learned about using technology, and were there challenges in your particular courthouse?
There were many challenges. The quickness of the shutting down of the state and the city and what we were going to do. We had cases that were already scheduled months out in advance. Again, my credit goes to staff. I couldn't have done it alone. I didn't have to do it alone. When we were told that the first justice, the clerk magistrate, and the chief court officer needed to be in the building, I showed up. 4 individuals in this room are also there with me. We actually created a COVID war board, as we called it, to try to figure out what we needed to address so that nothing got left to the side and no defendant's case wasn't addressed, no victim's case, no restraining order. We collaborated and really worked as a team to make sure that people had access to justice. It was important, even though the sign on the door says we weren't open, we were open. We were answering the phones. So the challenges we had, we're in an old building, and we have difficulties with our phones. We have difficulties with the electricity at times, but same thing, we had the technology. So we started on the bridge line, which then grew to a polycom situation, kind of like what you have here. We didn't get Zoom up and running in the courthouse for about 6 months later. And again, credit to my staff, they were in it. Joanne here from the Boston Municipal Court also was on the phones with us all the time, just making sure that we had the technology that was available. And it wasn't always available, but it kind of rolled out. So I think that then not having the infrastructure to support the technology, once we got in there were some bumps with that. But for the most part, the administrative office, the trial court, really tried to give us what we needed to make sure that people had access to justice. And we did our best, and it was not easy, but again, I couldn't have done it without them. And now we've actually adopted some of the things that we've learned. So, the CMVI is the civil motor vehicle hearings. We were doing those over the phone, and now we're doing them on Zoom, which saves people from taking a whole day off, right, to fight a ticket. We've been doing small claims, which has allowed people who have since moved during COVID and maybe living in New York or Connecticut and California don't have to come back. We're using that technology for access to justice so that their cases are heard. We still have it in the courtroom. We're kind of using that so that the defendants don't have to be transported back and forth on matters that the counsel, that their attorneys can do in the courtroom on the Zoom. But We like being in person. I mean, that's what the court is about, helping people, and there's some things that you just need to see in person that you can't see on Zoom, you can't see in the technology. So, so we have learned, we have grown, we have adopted some of the technology for the access to justice. But give me the in-person any day.
I agree. I think all of us like to be, it's not just being in person and seeing people. There's something about being, even if you're opposing somebody, there's something about, it's like going to the cinema. There's something about being in community. It's just not the same. What would you say are some of the, because as you know, access to justice is one of my pet peeves. And I probably said to you, you know, some of my thoughts might be considered a bit radical, because I think the Band-Aid solutions to our courts are fiscally irresponsible and wasteful. And this whole conversation about 90 million into the Springfield courthouse is ridiculous. So if you blow it up and build a new one. I don't know why their delegation isn't saying that. And part of the reason why, it's not just the inability of the technology, like in your building, it's not built for that. I'm a realtor, and I've worked as a general contractor on literally boots on the ground in projects. There are some things that cannot be converted, not with what we need today. It's not possible, not to the price of doing it correctly. But the other issue in this is, when we say access to justice, that very first word, accessibility. Is your courthouse friendly? And I don't know the answer, I'm not trying to trick you. You know, to somebody in a chair, a wheelchair, to somebody who can't see, to somebody who can't hear. Because probably 90% of us, I used to know the number, I don't know anymore, so I'm gonna guess, 90% of us will be quote unquote disabled or differently abled at some point in our life. When we have that report, you know, I've worked with the administration and they have listened on something, but I have to say they've listened to this, and we're seeing more people being appointed to positions on the bench that have different abilities than we've seen before. Clerk magistrates, you know, some people, we don't know that they can't hear. We don't know that they can't see, but they can't. How is your courthouse with that? I mean, can you use more help, or does it meet the standard?
We are an old courthouse. South Boston, Charlestown, and East Boston are three of the oldest buildings, I think, within the Boston Municipal Court Department, and none of them have been renovated in recent times. But we have made accommodations to make sure that that access is available. So myself and my staff, if somebody is outside the building and can't get in for some reason, we go out. We bring the services out to them as best we can. We have, through the administrative office, we also have the instruments for the hearing impaired. If there's, you know, a need for that, we employ that. We walk people through the Zoom. If they can't get in, we pivot and we make the technology work for them. So again, we can bring them into the court without physically bringing them in. So, so we have had to do that because of the age and the limitations of the building.
Yeah.
And it's worked. But as you said, it's a Band-Aid approach right now, and I think that we have to be cognizant, and as you said, there are more people out there that they use the courts for so many things.
Population. And at some point in the game, a lot of us are going to be in court for something. It might be just to support, you know, I was there with a client just in support because she was so nervous to go into the courtroom. You know, there are some of us who don't practice law. There are reasons why we would be in a courtroom. And it's, you know, I know Mayor Wu just made the Boston City Council chambers accessible. We thought they were accessible, but they really weren't. And it's just shifting, and it's not to point fingers or say fault. I don't, you know, I'm not about that. I'm about, like, how do we make it better?
And I think, but with that though, we can't lose sight of the importance of the community court.
Correct.
You can make a court accessible to someone, but it may not be really accessible because it's not within the community. And I think we need to really emphasize the importance of those community courts. Because we serve the community and we do our best in any way we can. Not sure that making a court center is
Not cool.
right, is the,
Courts, which are, you know, the thing.
not everybody can
We
get there.
did not speak, right? But it was in the last administration, it's in this administration, it will probably be in the next administration. And you and I had this conversation. My objection to that is we have a crappy public transportation system. And if someone can't get to court, there is no access to justice, and there's no justice for all, and we're just talking words. We're not speaking reality. I live on an island. Before I moved there, I thought it was a peninsula. I didn't actually realize Gloucester was an island. It's really an island. And there are really people who don't leave. I mean, they never have. I mean, it's a different mindset. Our court is going to be closing pretty soon for renovations. The deep, real concern is, will it ever reopen? Or will they move us up the line, as they call it, to Salem, which is 26 miles away? And what does that mean? That means in a domestic dispute, the perpetrator and the victim may be on the same train if it runs on time, and then they still have to walk to the courthouse. They still have to pay almost $20 just for the trip. Doesn't talk about, what you're gonna do with your kids and everything. There are a lot of really complex issues here.
You don't have to live on an island to have that same experience. So
To have an island go off.
would you experience that same thing if you asked them to go to, I don't know, Revere, to have a case or something like that. So you're right, it's the story, it's the personal experience.
Right.
But the important thing is, how do we make sure that people do have access?
I'm so pleased to hear you speak about that, because I think it's something that we have lost sight of. And I think, I've said it many times and I'll say it again, courts are in the business of administering justice. We're not in the business of making money. We don't want to waste money, but we are one of the 3 branches of government, and we get about 2.5% of the state budget. So they can cough up a little bit more dough, frankly, the reps and the senators. They have to. This is a huge issue. I'm Irish, and Italian. I can run my mouth about this stuff forever, but my family is also originally from Charlestown and West Roxbury, so I know almost tribalism of particularly our Irish clans in those communities. Thank you for your application. I think that you bring a lot to the Commonwealth, and thank you for dedicating your life to public service. And I'm sure there are some nice things about it, I hope, but I also know that somebody with not just the great family and support that you came from, but with beautiful education, you'd be making 3-4 times the money in the private sector. And I think it's very important that people understand that you do this out of service. And I for one, appreciate it. So thank you for your application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy.
Good morning. I think we're going backwards on the technology. A lot of places won't let you zoom in anymore at pre-trials and C&Es. Well, the judges take the attitude that we shouldn't be doing that anymore, that the pandemic's basically over and people should have to appear, including defendants on compliance and election dates, pre-trial hearing dates. How do you feel about that?
I follow the standing order.
Well, now you're a judge. It's not the standing order anymore. Court. Judge Joe Ferrara's in front of you with the client, says, Judge, he's in school. Can we waive his appearance today?
Well, I think we've worked well over the years as clerks, trying to, with the attorneys, being understanding when in that situation. So I would see no reason why your client, if you're there as the attorney, you've had contact with him, you know where he is or she is, and asking for to waive the appearance.
That's my point. Some judges are saying, want them here every time. You think that's necessary? But didn't we learn something from the pandemic, that on compliance and election dates and pretrial dates and non-event dates, shall we say, that we don't really need the client there?
I agree.
I find that things move a lot smoother and more quickly. Cases move more quickly when 100%. Something's happening, it's different, okay? I have to move a case at a court this afternoon that I have tomorrow. I can't make it. They're no longer accepting motions to continue by email, which I could put on a Zoom at 2 o'clock if they did that. They're saying you have to bring the motion out. You can Zoom in, but you got to bring the motion out. If I have to be there, I have to be there. That's necessary.
I respect how each of the first justices and the clerk magistrates interpret the standing order for their needs of their court, but in my court, if you know, we have.
Put the standing order aside, just put it aside, let's just talk common sense.
Can't, because the standing order is what controls this. I mean, that controls the operations of.
Even the trial court, common sense doesn't come from the trial.
I mean,
Established that.
have some discretion, but we also need to have rules, right? Because we can't have 250 courts all.
But why can't the rule be, if you're gonna file a motion to continue, you can email it in? It worked for 2 years during the pandemic.
It did, but I'm not sure the email system was set up for that purpose. I mean, that's not the.
But it worked.
It worked for some. It's hard. I mean, I'm,
Maybe we gotta fix things a little bit.
you know what, to be honest with you, we need more staffing. Because we cannot man,
I agree with that.
my staff cannot man everything and the general email box to make sure that that stuff is prepared.
I agree with that. You need more staffing, 100%. But just in terms of, the federal court system, everything's e-filing. Everything.
But we're not an e-file system, that's the other thing. I mean, this was a Band-Aid, as Council Duff talked about, it was a Band-Aid approach, it was a temporary approach that stays with us, and you're right. We need to revisit to see if we can make it work better, but right now, we're stuck with the Band-Aid and no staffing to really make it do what.
I get the staffing issue, but, maybe if you're talking about important motions, like a motion to suppress or something, you want the hard copy there, you want it filed, you want it done probably. I don't think that's necessarily easy. But when somebody's filing a motion to continue something, you're gonna make them deliver it to South Boston to have it heard in the afternoon?
We don't do that now, and I don't see that being in a position.
It's happening, places, things like that.
I respect what the other first justices have decided, but we've made it work for the betterment of the attorneys and us as well.
Some of the first justices are saying, I want the defendants, and some judges are here every single time, which I don't think is necessary either. And you touched on something else too, is the lack of consistency. We need consistency throughout the court. We have to know what the rules are. It's one rule in South Boston, it's another in Concord. You know what I mean? There should be some consistency. Anyway, that said, okay, I think you probably have the best staff in the court system. You know that I'm very, very familiar with all of them, and they are always incredibly helpful, not just to me, but to everybody who comes in there. So you absolutely, positively do. I've loved your family forever. Dad, as you know, was my friend back 45 years ago. He was very, very nice to me when I was a kid. So was up here. And I had a very warm relationship with him over the years. I hope he's watching this today. I know he's not doing as well as he was, but he was a great public servant, really dedicated, old style politician who really tried to help people. That's the way he was. And over the years, I know your brother Michael well. He does a great job on the city council. Has always been very helpful to me. Forget that I represent a portion of Boston as well. Your whole family's great public servants. You have a great background. You have always been incredibly accommodating to everybody in that court, including myself. Even before, I want to point out, I was on the governor's council. Okay, way back in 2005 when you started coming there. So I thank you for that, and there's absolutely no question that I intend to vote for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor DePaolo.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you first for your career of service to the Commonwealth. And from what I've heard and talked to people, you've done it with integrity, which I value. I want to ask you about some of the decisions you'll be making as a judge. So in your application, you wrote about that your goal would be to gather all relevant information to assist you in balancing the goals of rehabilitation, deterrence, and public safety. Could you talk about how that balance plays out in your head?
Well, I think it first starts with gathering as much information as I can from the representatives of the parties. So in a criminal case, would be hearing from the Commonwealth, in addition to reading the police report, what they've heard from the victim, alleged victim in the case, or any witnesses. Also hearing from the defense attorney. As I spoke in my opening statements, hearing the defendant's story. We all have a story. What is it about this particular individual that had brought him or her before the court? Is there family support? Is there a substance use disorder issue? Is there a mental health issue? Are there services that we can direct to this individual so that we have a rehabilitation happening and not a repeat offender happening before the court?
So you'd imagine a defendant's background as if it's negative, to be a mitigating factor potentially against their behavior?
I think it's definitely something that should be made known. Hopefully the defense attorneys are going to tell you about their client.
Sure.
And I think.
The reality in district court, especially with public defenders, is they don't have a lot of time necessarily with their clients ahead of appearing. Is that accurate?
From a small court perspective, I would tend to disagree with that. I mean, we see the same Suffolk Lawyers for Justice bar advocates coming through, as well as the CPCS Attorney Donovan is here as well. She is a Suffolk Lawyers for Justice bar advocate who's in our court.
But my question is, if they're able to, how much time and in-depth knowledge of their defendant they're able to gather ahead of appearing in court with their defendant, with their client?
My experience is that they take their job of being a zealous advocate very seriously, and the information that I've witnessed, expressed to, or provided to the presiding justice has been pretty in-depth. And then again, I think the burden would shift that it wasn't, if I wasn't hearing enough information, then I would ask the questions and hopefully ask the attorney to provide additional information.
Because you're under a time crunch, it's worth the time to do that, to make those inquiries as a judge?
Absolutely.
Is it ever in the interest, so the three factors we're thinking about are public safety, deterrence, and rehabilitation. Is it ever in the interest of public safety to incarcerate a nonviolent individual?
Again, I would have to know all the facts in the scenario presented, but under that question,
If there's no, if there's no history of violence, either in the criminal background or that's been brought up in court, and the charge itself is nonviolent, is there ever a public safety interest in incarcerating them?
maybe, but that would have to be something that would be brought out by the DA, I would imagine. But my thought is, I'm thinking of shoplifting, I'm thinking of trespass, I'm thinking of disorderly. Those are, in my opinion, not incarceration worthy. So if that's where, but if there's something that is not known.
Sure.
Based on the charge, then that would be something to consider. And again, it's
Sounds like limited circumstances, but it's possible.
possible.
It's possible. And when it comes to deterrence, there's a lot of substance abuse disorder and addiction going through district court. Is it ever in the interest of deterrence to incarcerate someone with substance abuse disorder or addiction? Will that incarceration ever deter an individual from returning to court?
I don't think so. I mean, there should be, as we know, the road to recovery is not a straight road. So there has to be that understanding and compassion from the bench that a person is going to risk recovery. They're going to have slips. They're going to have some slip-ups. But so long as that person doesn't become a danger to themselves or others as a result of that, then I think that the rehabilitation, the deterrence factor should be in the way of treatment, not incarceration.
And I was happy to hear you talked earlier in this hearing that you know some of the resources that are available in the community. That's a benefit of being in the position you're in now, to be elevated. What are examples of some of the resources that, as a judge, you could utilize, like specific community resources that could potentially be effective diversions for folks?
Sure. So from the South Boston court, my experience has been working with the Gavin Foundation. So over the years, the Gavin Foundation is within the community, has set up a treatment program. They have steps, they have housing. They actually have expanded out. They've got a women's home in Brockton. They've got another place in Quincy. But those are outside court resources that we can direct people to if they are interested in getting treatment. Boston Municipal Court Department also has a program called the BOAT program, which South Boston, Charlestown, West Rockland, Justice Kathy Coffey is the liaison or the coordinator of that. That provides outpatient addiction and mental health assistance to individuals who have pending criminal cases. So we have a boat session once a week in South Boston where a counselor comes from the program. The probation department is there, an attorney is there, and the judge is there, and they talk about the services that the defendants has been taking advantage of and how they're progressing through the treatment program. We also have the mental health courts. We also have the veterans courts. So there are a number of alternative.
So are you, in your experience, are you seeing reduced recidivism amongst the folks who are going through those programs? Or is it, well, how does it, what's the outcome?
You know, to be honest with you, I'm not as involved
Sure.
in the roster, if you will, of the individual there, but I could tell you past experience when we had a drug court,
Yeah.
we would see great successes from people that had worked that program, and they would come back as counselors. So they came back and they would be running the meetings in the evenings. We did lose a number of people to overdoses after they had been clean for a period of time and then took up again. But there was great successes, I think, in the individual courts with the drug courts.
Within the judiciary, are statistics kept on recidivism when folks are diverted into particular programs? Like, how do we know that? We know they're working anecdotally, and that's not a trick question.
No.
And if there isn't, as a judge, would you advocate to try to find a way to do that? Admittedly with limited resources, but it seems to me it's highly valuable because that's our goal, is to end recidivism.
As the clerk magistrate, I don't keep those statistics. Those
Right.
statistics aren't available to me or something that I would be able to gather. I would hope that the trial court is doing that. There are a number of programs, there are a number of departments within the trial court that's what they do. They gather statistics from mass courts and publish those as requested. But I would hope that they are looking at them because I think that's how we determine if we're doing the right thing. Maybe, do we have to tweak that program? Is there something else that needs to be done in order to provide the services?
Okay, let's shift gears for a second. So in the Harvard study, which is a couple of years old now, the disparities around racial sentencing start in the charging phase. And so a Black or Latino defendant is twice as likely to land in Superior Court when there's concurrent jurisdiction between district and Superior. So in your role, or even just with your perspective on the system you've worked in, why do you think that's happening?
If my memory serves me right, in the study, they focused on the charging of those cases that had concurrent jurisdictions.
Right.
The gun cases, they were the serious narcotic cases.
Well, that's where, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's where that's where the sentencing disparity was. Okay, but back to the charging phase.
Well, the charging phase comes, I mean, that's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized what you're saying. Yes. Continue. I apologize.
So when they were looking at it, that's where the study was coming from. And I think that there's a lot of factors that go into that. There's the charging by the DA's office. There's the charging by the police, the original arresting.
So do you think that DA's offices are overcharging Black and Latino defendants?
I'm not in a position to say that with any.
Because if they're twice as likely to end up in Superior Court, it's happening somewhere, right?
But they're not telling you the communities that the individuals are coming from, right? I mean, you're talking about the Boston Municipal Court Department, which is a very diverse, there are 8 neighborhoods in the city of Boston with diverse populations.
Sure.
So nothing.
I think the study tried to control for everything they could in that regard. So we're likely, even if we could have more perfect information, we're still likely to see the difference, right?
Kudos to the individuals that did the research because there were a lot of things that they wanted access to and they just couldn't.
Able to.
Just couldn't get it. So they did an admirable job on trying to get as much information and examine it and then come to the conclusions, I think, that have been very insightful as far as that document goes, I think, for those of us that work in the trial court.
Okay. Is it reasonable for folks to be concerned whether there's a balance between prosecutors and defense attorneys on the bench?
I don't think so. I think that I know both. And when, through all the vetting process that happens, including in this council, I think by the time the individual gets to the bench, they understand that they are to be fair and impartial. They're not a prosecutor anymore. They're not a defense attorney. They have to handle the case that's before them.
Great. Thank you again for your career service, and thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Margaret.
I have a million questions for you, but we had a great conversation on the phone, and basically from reading your application and talking to you on the phone, also getting some calls from um, colleagues of mine in the judiciary, they have nothing but great things to say about you. I think you've got it all in terms of family and balancing those out. You've done your work in the trenches, so to speak, field to field. And I really don't have any questions. Your attitude about bail and domestic violence, those kinds of things will serve you well. I do want to point to one thing, though. It was my experience that if you've got someone, first offense, shoplifting, I agree, no big deal. But when you've got a record of shoplifting and breaking into cars, there's a drug issue there, really. And I think that's very different. There can be nonviolent crimes that do affect people and their sense of safety. Having had my car broken into, not happy. Having my house broken into, really not happy. And that stayed with me for a long time. So you can have a quote unquote nonviolent crime where nobody got hurt. But to me, any crime that affects someone's sense of security and safety is something that the public should be concerned about. I don't agree with incarcerating, anybody for first offense. And in district court, despite what all of the critics say, there's no first offense that I can think of that the district court has jurisdiction of, where if somebody's going to go to jail, it just doesn't happen. So, I think you're going to do a great job. I congratulate you. I usually tell people, make sure you've got a robe where you work the first day. Did I tell you that story? I was on the education committee for the district court, and this gal came in, and I was also mentor judges to judges in our area. And she came in and she said, okay, I'm ready. And I said, where's your robe? And she's like, I didn't know I have to get a robe. So I said, well, fortunately for you, my mom and dad gave me one and the Bar Association gave me one. So I will lend you this for as long as you need it, but today you're going to order a robe. So I usually tell judges for the first day, make sure you got a robe. And to walk around for a couple of years, getting up every day going, oh my God, I'm a judge. And you put the robe on and it's like, oh, wow, this is what I've been working for. So I think you're going to do a great job and I'm going to vote for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You think she could borrow your robe if she needs it?
Yes, I have a couple in the closet that I usually lend to people for moot court.
Councilor Ferrera.
Thank you. We had a great conversation. I appreciate your public service and your family's public service. I'm a big fan of your brother and respect what all of you have done over the years. You're going to make an excellent judge. You have my vote next week. Thank you.
Yes.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, that the nominee applied for the BMC. There were many vacancies in 2013. She had 21 years experience, district attorney, and in the court, and wasn't even interviewed. I want to thank you for all the time that you afforded me. I think it was 4 hours. You closed the diner. So I thank you for that. And, with your family's history and their dedication, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I ask every nominee this. We have 21 attorneys that have the awesome responsibility to review. And I'd like to know. I'd like to know how many were there at your hearing.
They were running two different interview sessions at that point, so I think there were 4 on Zoom and or 5 in the hearing room at the.
Can you imagine? So the majority of them never met you, never saw you, never talked to you, never called you, and they voted for your nomination. I'm not pointing to you because you deserve it. You deserve it. So I want to say that. But I just have to say, I can't even name all the people, and I would be remiss if I did mention Judge Machera. He said he learned so much from you, and he's so grateful, and he's so happy that you're going to be a judge. Thank you.
Council Ryan,
Thank you. I forgot to mention my good friend, we used to work together many, many years ago, Judge Michael Point. We worked at the courthouse, so I don't know, it's been a few years, but a couple. Strong supporter of yours, he called me, and I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you, Judge Quinn.
I forgot to mention one thing, Judge Rafi Hussein called me, and he's a huge fan, so I just told him I would mention that, and he's a big fan. Thank you.
So, just on the issue of the JNC, you know, there's 21 members of that body, and they meet every Tuesday evening, sometimes till late in the evening. They're from all over the state. And then they spend a pretty good amount of time, probably about 20 hours a month, on checking out people and making phone calls, doing the due diligence. Do all that for nothing. Get a dime for it. It's a good public service to do. With that, I agree. Yes, Councilor Duff.
Chairman, I wasn't going to say it, but since you brought it up, I am going to say, and to add on to your point, you know, I don't agree with this governor about a whole lot of things. I do agree with him on some things. And I've said before, you know, I actually have a degree, a master's degree in organizational development and how we make organizations work more efficiently and better. This governor has chosen to do exactly what you started referring to, is they split the JNC in half to keep the judicial process moving. Half meet with one candidate and half meet with the other candidate. Now, that may not be how it was done 25 years ago, but things have changed. People have changed, modes of efficiency have changed, and the governor has changed. Now, the next governor, whoever it may be, may decide to do something different. I think it's a good process because of what Council Jubinville said. These people are volunteers. Some of them live in Pittsfield. To expect them to drive to Boston on their own dime every single week to provide a public service is a little bit much. And so I think the public, because we hear this thing every week, going, oh, no one shows up for the meeting. That's not true. That's just not true. They may not be there physically, but they get back together and they discuss every single candidate. So to imply that this group of 20+ volunteers is negligent in their job is wrong. When I grew up, something like that was called a lie. So it's not true, and I think it's important that what you said, it goes to the record if people are watching and it is recorded, that they understand the JNC is doing their job, albeit differently than how they did it 25 years ago.
So, Chair,
Yes.
on the issue, every single one of those JNC representatives read every one of those 40-page applications, not just for the ones that make it through to us after meeting with the governor, et cetera. They have a tremendous amount of work to do in order to end the backlogs. The governor started to implement this new system. Every single person, whether they're at the interview in person or not, has read that interview. They have discussed who gets through for an interview with the JNC. They then do due diligence. Individual people do the due diligence. Every single one of them is aware of every candidate's qualifications